In the late 1960s, the rural outskirts of Vallejo were considered quiet retreats for families and young couples. But on a lonely stretch of Lake Herman Road, that isolation became the backdrop for a brutal, inexplicable crime. On December 20th, 1968, with Christmas just days away, 18-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Lou Jensen drove out to a secluded spot. It was their very first official date. Sometime around 11:15 p.m., someone approached their parked vehicle and opened fire. David was killed near the car, while Lou was struck trying to run. There was no robbery, no apparent motive, and no witnesses left behind. 7 months later, the violence repeated itself. On the 4th of July, 1969, 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Majot were parked at Blue Rock Springs Park. Another vehicle pulled up, and the driver began shooting. Darlene was killed, but Michael survived the devastating assault. Michael's survival gave police their first eyewitness. The undeniable similarities between the two nighttime attacks forced investigators to confront a terrifying reality. A serial killer was actively hunting in the region. Just past midnight, following the attack on Darlene and Michael, the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call. A calm, rehearsed voice on the line took credit for the shooting, and then casually confessed to killing David and Lou months earlier. On August 1st, the killer reached out again. 3 local newspapers received handwritten letters containing unpublished crime scene details. The author demanded these letters be printed on the front page, anchoring his message with a distinct crosshair symbol. Accompanying the letters was a complex cryptogram made up of over 400 symbols. The writer made a bold claim. Solving this cipher would reveal his true identity. Within days, amateur codebreakers cracked the cipher. It didn't provide a name. Instead, the translated message detailed the killer's belief that murder was a form of entertainment and that his victims would become his servants in the afterlife. Shortly after, another letter arrived, where the author officially introduced himself. "I am the Zodiac." By branding his crimes, he successfully manipulated the press, turning local tragedies into a widespread spectacle driven by his own ego. By late September 1969, the killer altered his pattern entirely. He moved away from the cover of night and struck in broad daylight at the crowded, sunlit shores of Lake Berryessa. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking near the water when a stranger approached. He wore a black executioner-style hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes and a large white crosshair drawn squarely on his chest. Speaking in a calm, controlled voice, the masked man forced Cecilia to tie Brian before binding her as well. He then produced a large knife and viciously stabbed them both. The rehearsed demeanor and elaborate costume indicated highly deliberate planning. Before leaving the park, he walked to Brian's car. Using a black marker, he listed the dates, added "by knife," and drew his signature crosshair. Though Cecilia died from her injuries, Brian survived to describe the attack. This shift to a daylight, costumed stabbing proved law enforcement was facing an adversary who actively adapted to maximize public terror. Less than 2 weeks later, the Zodiac entered a dense urban environment. On October 11th, taxi driver Paul Stine was shot at point-blank range in his cab on the busy streets of San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. These police composite sketches were developed after witnesses spotted the suspect, but during the immediate aftermath, an emergency dispatch error mistakenly described the shooter as a black male. Responding officers unknowingly allowed a white man walking near the crime scene to pass right by them. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another taunting letter mocking the police for the near miss. Enclosed with it was a piece of fabric cut directly from Paul Stine's blood-stained shirt. That piece of physical evidence removed any lingering speculation of a hoax. It proved conclusively that the person writing the letters was the exact same individual committing the murders. The investigation scaled up immediately as detectives across multiple jurisdictions shared their evidence. Ballistics, handwriting samples, and fingerprints were all compared in a massive cooperative effort. Arthur Lee Allen emerged as the prime suspect. Despite owning a crosshair watch and wanting to call himself Zodiac, the circumstantial case fell apart. The physical evidence refused to align, and fingerprints recovered from the crime scenes did not match Allen's. Decades later, when forensic scientists tested biological material left on the envelopes, the available DNA profiles also failed to conclusively link Allen to the crimes. He was never charged. Failing to connect the prime suspect exposed the limitations of forensic science in the 1960s. Without biological matching, investigators were left chasing shadows. After a relentless campaign of violence and threats, the confirmed attacks abruptly stopped. The stream of authenticated letters slowed to a halt, leaving behind a sudden, inexplicable silence. This document shows the 340 cipher, a grid of symbols mailed by the killer. It frustrated military experts, supercomputers, and professional codebreakers for over half a century. In 2020, an international team finally broke the code, but the solution yielded no true identity, only more disturbing ramblings about the killer's lack of fear regarding the gas chamber. The mystery migrated into the modern internet era, where thousands of users analyze police reports and map out victim timelines. While this digital scrutiny can spark new leads, it also fuels misinformation that targets innocent people. Even with the advent of global databases and international code-breaking teams, the name of the killer remains absent from the file. The Zodiac achieved his twisted goal. He secured his place in American myth, inspiring decades of books, podcasts, and Hollywood films. But behind that dark celebrity are the real people whose lives were stolen. David Faraday, Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stine, and survivors like Michael Mageau and Brian Hartnell, who carried the physical and psychological trauma of those attacks for the rest of their lives. Detectives continue to review the preserved evidence. Investigators regularly apply modern forensics and advanced DNA techniques to the original letters and envelopes, offering a sliver of hope that science might one day provide closure. For the families left behind, the fascination surrounding the killer's identity provides no relief. Decades later, they are still living with the sudden silence of a future that was cut short. The search for the truth matters not to satisfy a morbid curiosity, but to honor the victims whose futures were unjustly erased.